thanks everybody for coming and giving me the opportunity to present some of the findings from my PhD research and discuss them with you. To start with, I actually want to pick up a quotation from the stem cell retrospective event that took place 2 weeks ago in London, organized by the Forum as well. And one of the speakers was Fiona Fox, who is the director of the Science Media Center, which is like the institutional link between scientists and science journalists when science hits the headlines, as they themselves say. Are you actually okay seeing the slides when I stay here, or do you need to step back?
I can't quite see, yeah. Just, I might move around, otherwise you won't be able to see them.
You could just
stand to the left or
just
oh, well,
because then we'll have the same problem with the slide, I guess.
Now I can.
Well, yeah, will that be okay? As long as you can read my slides. Okay, so there's this quote from Fiona, who, referring to the debate around the Human Embryology and Fertilization Act, said or claimed that a new narrative between science and the media has developed, and that scientists nowadays see communicating with the public and the media as part of their job if they are working on controversial issues. And I think that this claim, or maybe in its more moderate form, as an expectation that scientists should see communicating with the media and the public as part of their job, that this is rather symptomatic for demands that are put forward towards science and towards scientists in relation to all different science communication activities. So that's from the start of the public understanding of science movement, as it was first called, then transformed into public engagement with science and technology. This German program is a so-called PUSH initiative. That's a joint initiative by all the research organizations, research societies and research councils called Wissenschaft im Dialog. These programs are also often called Science and Society. Then there's the more practical side of it, which is training of media and communication skills. The institutional side, press offices or the Science Media Center. Then you've got all sorts of prizes for science communication awarded, for example, by the German Research Council and the European Union. And then, last but not least, all the activities around public consultation and participation. And they all have very different aims, and they all vary in how they construct the relationship of science and society or science and the public. But they have one thing in common, and that is that they expect an engagement from the scientists themselves. And I think what these expectations show, first of all, is that science is not generally a visible occupation, but when kind of the production of knowledge developed in what we now know as modern science, this process took place by scientists closing their communication and using technical jargon, and developing the scientific community as their primary audience. And I think this is rather nicely exemplified by this poster here that came with an article on Science and Society that was published in the journal Science. And it states, the researchers are among us. So this, to me, sounds a little bit as if this is a certain kind of alien that's among us, and they are more and more numerous, and you can increasingly spot them, and you've got one, and to everyone's surprise, he looks rather normal and even takes the bus. But I think the point I want to make is that this actually, first of all, the attempts to bridge the gap, first of all, shows that it exists. And that's why I think it is worthwhile to, both from the perspective of science communication and also from the perspective of the sociology of science, which is the subfield of sociology that deals with the institutional and epistemic changes and characteristics of science. From these two perspectives, to have a look at these demands and to ask what actually are the reaction of the scientists to these demands and expectations, and do they induce changes with regard to the professional role of scientists and with regard to knowledge production. When I started my PhD, as been trained as a biologist before, one of my major intentions with the whole undertaking actually was to provide a database for debates among the genome researchers and to communicate, to go to another disciplines, use their theory and method lessons, and then communicate that back to where these expectations are actually raised and where this phenomenon is an issue. And I think this is also where my work very nicely links in with what the forum does. And it's probably not a coincidence that like the forum and the whole network is about genomics, and that I picked the case of human genome research as my case on the study as well, completely independent of that. Because of course all these demands and expectations are especially high with regard to fields that have a lot of ethical, legal and social issues and that have the potential to impact everybody's life. And I will just very briefly characterize the field that you all know very well from a sociology of science point of view. You can characterize it as big science, as multidisciplinary, international, big collaborations, and a huge amount of funding. Therefore, the field is in a pronounced need of legitimation, both within science, because if you fund big science, you can't fund a lot of other scientific projects, and also in need of legitimation from society because of all these ethical, legal, and social issues. This causes a high policy relevance. There's high public and private investment. It's actually the first big science project in biology that had so much investment. And this all leads to the field being cutting-edge science, and that there is a strong scientific competition within the field, and especially in the case of human genome research and the Human Genome Project, a rivalry developed between the internationally funded Human Genome Project that mapped and sequenced and functionally analyzed the human genome since 1990, yeah. And in 1998, the private firm Rödder announced that they would sequence the human genome as well. So from 1998 to 2001, the two sequencing efforts raced each other to finish the first sequence. Is that
just a practice?
Okay. And what happened in that period, which I call the final phase of the human genome sequencing, is that the media attention that was already quite a lot of media interest in the field, but in that period the media attention got even higher, and that has been shown for different countries and in a number of studies. And before I go on to talk about the impact of this media attention on the field, I want to clarify some of my concepts. So what am I actually talking about when I speak about science and the media and the public?